Today's gospel reading focuses on the parable of the Samaritan woman. And this is a parable we could call it 3 acts. The first being that focus on the Samaritan woman and that initial contact between Jesus and she. The second part being his discussion with the apostles, and the third, his discussion with the Samaritans themselves. And there's plenty that could be discussed about each of these acts, so to speak. When we're looking for how do we put this into practice, there's much that we can learn. In that second section where the apostles are speaking to Jesus, I think this is the part where we can focus on. In this part, the apostles, they've gone away, they've gone shopping, because after all, they were on quite a journey. They're on a journey, and they had to stop in this place where the half-castes lived, this place where those race traitors lived, those awful people. And I guess we have to stop because geography. Okay, so we'll shop and then we'll go. We certainly wouldn't interact with any of these awful people. That this is exactly what Jesus did is part of the magnitude of today's reading. And you would think that students of a noted teacher, a teacher being a guide, someone whose footsteps you would follow in, you would think that the apostles would say, this is not on. This is not right. You can't be doing this. Yet this isn't what they did. They didn't try to correct their teacher, but instead they figured that he must know something. And so they focused on what it was that they had been tasked with. And so they focused on making sure that he had eaten. They focused on making sure that his temporal needs were taken care of. Rabbi, eat, they told him. And as so often happens, he directed them to something higher, something loftier, something more heavenly. When he says, I don't need this, I already have food. I have all that I need already. Then he redirects them. Then he redirects them to the swarm that was coming down the hill. To the swarm of white-robed inhabitants of that city, streaming down the hill, hearing about the promised teacher. The Jews were awaiting a Messiah, someone who would deliver them from bondage. The Samaritans were waiting for a teacher, someone who would tell them the mysteries of all things. And Jesus that speaks to them is he. And so Jesus redirects them to the apostles, to the Samaritans streaming down the hill. He says, don't be telling me that it's not harvest time yet. Don't be using that parable. It doesn't apply here. These fields are white for harvest. It's time to do the work that we've been sent to do. How can we be focusing on other things when God has told us what to do and given us the time to do it? How many have waited for the day, and yet the day is ours? And we see in the totality of the reading, this masterful way this great role model of reaching out to those who are not like us, reaching out to those for whom there were many barriers. We saw when Jesus spoke to the Samaritan woman, he was crossing race boundaries, he was crossing boundaries of gender, he was crossing boundaries of class. There should not have been a world where it was possible for this celebrated Jewish rabbi to be speaking with this shameful woman. We know this to be true because there's no other reason that you would go to a well at midday. I don't know how many people have brought buckets up out of wells. It's hard going. You don't do that at midday in the hottest part of the day. You do that at daybreak maybe, where you can see that the world hasn't heated up yet. But no, this was someone who was kept away from the rest of the world, who was kept away from society because of the things that she had done. And Jesus reached out to her. Through her, a city was led to the Messiah. Not just because of what she said, because she would have had very little credibility in this time and culture, but because she became that bridge for the city to see Christ. So then what shall we do? What shall we do for our own city? Our own city that is so much in need. For different people, it's going to be different things. Perhaps here, we're going to be the bridge. Perhaps for a few, we'll be the speaker. And I think, given the quantities of people in this particular reading, it's quite likely that at least some of us will be the apostles here, making sure that the earthly things are being taken care of, while the heavenly things are enacted. Each of these Sundays after Easter teach us something. Today, we have water being the place where the Messiah is met. Recall baptism just a few weeks ago, where water was the place where the Messiah was met. And so likewise, we see today. Next week, we'll see something very similar. Water being pivotal to the meeting of the Messiah. Dare we think that the rain outside might be a place where water is the context of meeting the Messiah? Perhaps we may feel that it gets in the way of things. It's a lot easier to walk down the street when it's not raining. And certainly in our climate, we're not used to it. But each time we see water, each time we see bodies of water, let's remember today's reading, where the woman met the Messiah through the earthly, and through the earthly she was taken to the heavenly. Through the earthly may we be taken to the heavenly. Through her prayers may we always follow her example. Amen.